Great Minnesota Northfield Massacre, Raid, White Dawn, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Wanderers, Breaking the Sound Barrier, altitude records of many types of descriptions. You've flown over 179 different kinds of aircraft, is that correct?
Yeah.
Each of you in your own way has pushed the envelope of science or imagination. Now I've got to ask you, in working together, what were the big surprises you had each about the other? Phil, could I ask you first?
What kind of surprises I had working with him? That he could act.
And he's handsome too, isn't he?
Well,
No pressure, Buck.
yeah, don't surprise me here.
He has all the charisma in the world. When we see him on screen briefly.
The screen lights up. It's probably the high point of the film, actually, when he comes on and says his line. But, I mean, my surprise, actually, it wasn't a negative surprise at all. I mean, it was just a pleasure meeting him and working with him. That was a surprise. I mean, here you have, I had a lot of apprehensions before I met him. Here's a general from the Air Force, and we're doing a movie, and I wanted to do a movie the way I wanted to do it, and so forth. And this guy here couldn't have been more helpful, nicer, and more inspiring to all the cast. We would hang out together in the evenings, and he would start by lecturing these guys on how it was, and end up playing pool and laughing with them, and it was great.
Can I ask you the same thing? Would you have had an evening down at Poncho's, say, with Phil Kaufman? Would he have been somebody who could have come in, you could have drunk with?
When you realize, his credentials, you're darn right. As a lot of movie people did hang around Poncho's, and it was fun going up and meeting Phil in Frisco, because you're in his territory, and he knows everything about really terrific food scrounger. He's really
Tom, you're talking of credentials.
Yeah.
One of the really key scenes to me in the film is during the fan dance number, in which the Mercury astronauts are being entertained down in Texas. Meantime, your character, Sam Shepard, is striving for a new altitude record in a new jet. It's like we are being reminded where the real priorities are. Would either of you comment on that?
Yeah, I think so. Phil, in his marvelous way of putting things together, and it goes around and falls into place. And he pretty well, I was really surprised when I saw how he had placed the cuttings of, the NF-104 flight and the Sally Rand fan dancing and the expression on the astronauts' faces. I was, real pleased with the way it turned out. And as far as priorities are concerned, he always reminded us all through the film that was your job. He always portrayed that in the film.
It's as if you're seeing Chuck Yeager's the conscience of the whole endeavor.
Right,
He's
exactly.
out there on the edges, always reminding.
Right. He's they're being given the goodies, so to speak, at that point. They're getting all the rewards from Houston, and they're getting Sally Rand doing her kind of mystifying fan dance. At least it starts out just as a fan dance with all the Texans whooping and whistling. And then pretty soon it gets into a little bit of a strange area, and in a strange kind of metaphorical way, I suppose. I looked on her almost like this kind of goddess of flight with the feathered wings, and she's kind of bringing them back to the reality of their roots, which is what the whole movie is about. The roots of these guys. They were test pilots. They came out of something, and that despite all the goodies and everything that they got, they knew even in that moment there was somebody out there pushing the outside of the envelope.
Ultimately, they remain the team, while you remain the loner, the individualistic, I suppose.
Yeah, because that's what you are when you're in a research airplane. You're on your own.
There's an obvious affection for those scenes in the Mojave Desert. In fact, I was reminded of a Howard Hawks' Only Angels Have Wings kind of setup. Are you a fan of that kind of picture, and are you?
Yes.
That was really one of the bases of that thing. It was meant to be. I felt very strongly about those movies of the 40s and how we lost characters like that in movies. And the character of Chuck Yeager as he is, and as Sam portrayed him, and Barbara Hershey as his wife, really I think harkens back to those movies, and Only Angels Have Wings is a good example.
I think even Tom Wolfe talks about the stunt pilot as a person who straps on his airplane. And we could liken that to maybe a gunfighter strapping on his holster and revolver. I don't know. What do you think of that?
Yeah, we always use the expression, when you strap your fanny to an airplane and take off. That's about the way it goes. Because you have to become a part of the airplane. And you have to have a lot of faith in that equipment, too, because your neck depends on it.
We're really crossing two different kinds of worlds here, filmmaking and spaceflight. Have you ever had a chance to take Philip Kaufman up in a jet?
No, not in a jet. I took him up in a prop airplane. We were out, landed on the dry lake
Would
bed.
you go up with him if he wanted to take you up?
Would I go up with him in a jet? Oh, sure. Of course, one thing he did with that little airplane was we got up a couple hundred feet, gave me the controls and turned the engine off. But it didn't fool me at all. I knew I was with this guy here. What did I say to you? What are we doing now? Then he also took me off, over one of those edges where you suddenly go weightless for a second. Didn't scare me at all, Chuck.
Yeah, sure.
And I bet you couldn't scare me in a jet at all either.
Probably not.
Chuck Yaeger, in conclusion, when you see Sam Shepard on the screen as you in 1947, say, were you that handsome then?
Yes, he
Well,
was.
naturally.
He was.
Well,
I mean, it must be an odd feeling to watch yourself portrayed on the screen,
it
generally
is.
speaking.
But you got to look back again, and that was a long time ago, and it was fun recreating those scenes with Sam. He did an excellent job too. In fact, probably a little too good.
Listen, I want to thank both of you for helping us strap on a little imagination. The Right Stuff, a Ladd company released through Warner Brothers, directed by Philip Kaufman, and in the most part, really, about people exemplified here by Chuck Yaeger. Thanks so much to both of you for talking with me. I'm John Tibbetts.